After a long break, we are back at Wilkes Production Studios in downtown Rockwood. I've got Leanne Hill-Malicote here as we have been stressed before we come on the air. Our guest today will be Coach John Webb, but before we get there, Leanne, do we have a salute to service today?
Yes, we do. Actually, today's salute to service is to Staff Sergeant James Webb. That is Coach John Webb's father. He was in the Cavalry Division of the Army, and as always, we just want to remember those that have served our country and our community and say thank you to those service people. And also thank you to Rome Land Surveying for making this salute to service moment possible. So, John, before we start talking about Coach John Webb, tell us a little bit about your dad. You said there was a story about him being in service.
Yeah, he was, and you know, a lot of people that know me know my dad was a lot older when I was born. He was actually 49 years old when I was born.
Okay.
I always joked around and said he was delayed by the war, you know, several of them, you know, World War II, Korean, and Vietnam War. But, you know, Dad, he was born in 1919. He's from Harriman, you know, and again, we'll probably get into all that here in just a minute as far as my heritage from Harriman goes. But, you know, Dad grew up in Harriman, you know, went to Harriman High School, at some point in time graduated. I asked him when I was younger, you know, what year he actually graduated. And back then, you know, in the late 30s, you know, with the war approaching and all that stuff, and all the young men, you know, enlisting in the military, you know, they all just kind of quit school and went in the military at that time. You know, so what they did back then, they just kind of put you in a graduating class. So his was probably a graduating class, probably supposed to be 37 or 38, but he really didn't know exactly which one he was in. You know, they put him in one. He was a pretty intelligent man, but anyways, he goes into the military. By my understanding, he spent 16 years. I don't know where all he was deployed. We never really talked about that. He was a proud military man. He talked about being in the military a lot, but he didn't really elaborate on it, and that's one thing that I wished that I would have done, is asked him more questions about it. He passed away in 2001. And one thing that we didn't know is that, so I'm assuming he went in the military in 38. He said he spent 16 years. So that means he probably got out in 1954, and that's when my grandfather passed away. So I'm assuming that's probably when he got out and came back home to help take care of some of the family. He was the oldest of, I don't know how many kids. I'd have to sit here and count them all up. There were several of them in that family. But after he passed away in 2001, me and my brothers are going through his stuff, and the one thing he never mentioned, he was always a proud Army man. But when we got in there and we got to looking through like an old Foot Locker of his and finding old pictures and old documents and stuff like that, we found something that was very, very highly unusual that we never know. None of my brothers knew. He actually enlisted in the Navy to begin with. And he started out in the Navy, and he ended up getting honorably discharged out of the Navy. Not one time, and he passed away when I was 31, 32 years old, not one time did he ever mention being in the Navy. I don't know if he had a bad experience in the Navy and he just didn't want to talk about it, or he knew that they were going to bomb Pearl Harbor and he wanted to get out of the Navy as soon as he could. I don't know, I have no earthly idea, but yeah, he started out in the Navy and was discharged, and then obviously enlisted in the Army and spent his career there.
Wow.
Yeah, that's always been weird. That's always, not many people knew that. And even some of his friends I talked to, you know, after he passed away, you know, later in life, they didn't know that either. And I'd asked them about it and they didn't know. So I don't know what the deal was. So.
Interesting.
Well, that's pretty interesting.
I didn't realize any of that.
Yeah.
Was your mama a local girl?
Well, you know, again, going back to Harriman, you know, Dad and his family was, you know, went to Harriman and Harriman High School, and my mom and that side of the family went to South Harriman High School, you know, went to South Harriman schools. And you know, so yeah, one was on one side of the bridge and the other was on the other side of the bridge. But I spent many a day growing up, you know, running the streets of Harriman, you know, being part of the Harriman community.
Okay, so for people that might not know this, Coach Webb won't even sign, when we work together, he wouldn't even sign a paper with blue ink, period. Blue is just, you can't tolerate it.
You're right, yeah, nobody's gonna see me ever wear a blue shirt or anything like that, and you know, so, but that started later on, and I will get to that story here in a few minutes. You know, it was a bad experience when I first got started doing this, and I had to change stuff, and it just kind of built over and over and over. You know, I think the world of the people in Harriman. You know, they're all good people. It's just, it goes back to the Rockwood Harriman football rivalry for me, and you know, there's no hard feelings or anything like that. It's just just the way it's got to be. You know, bottom line. So we got to keep it going.
It's
so
very traditional, and it's a rivalry.
Yes.
Rivalry that we all enjoy.
Yeah.
Having. So
I really enjoyed it during Coach Webb's tenure, but we'll get to that. Too.
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Cool. And you've got brothers.
Yes.
You have a sister.
No, I had 4 older brothers.
Okay, okay.
I've had 2 pass over the last several years. I was the youngest of 5 boys.
Okay.
You know, again, you know, I talked about Dad. You know, he was being delayed by the wars, and you know, I've always joked around, said, "Mom, it took her 5 times to get it right," you know, that type of thing. So, you know, anyways, yeah, I had 4 older brothers, and you know, grew up as the youngest one, which is, you know, a lot of people think that that's easy, but it's not. You know, growing up the way we grew up, but. Anyways, it was a good lesson, and you know, it benefited me and bodes well for what I'm doing now. So,
Good, good. Okay. Well, you will want to talk about you growing up. So, were you born in?
And I was born in Rockwood. I'm
At Chamberlain?
Yes, Chamberlain Memorial Hospital. I was born and raised in Rockwood. Probably grew up in Harriman, if you understand what I'm talking about.
Right.
Mom kept a pretty tight leash on us, you know, when we was here around, you know, here in Rockwood. Dad didn't, you know, so you can imagine that. You can just imagine.
So did you go to school?
Yes.
In Rockwood always?
I always went to school in Rockwood, and you know, spent a lot of summer times, you know, a lot of weekends, up until my teenage years. You know, going to visit my dad, and you know, running around, probably doing things I shouldn't have been doing. You know, I ain't very proud of, but you know, it is what it is. And luckily, you know, I was able to stay on the right track and be here able to talk to you all, you know, about some things. So. You know, it's one of those things, as far as Harriman goes, you know, I've spent a lot of time up there and got a lot of good friends, so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, tell us about your school experiences.
Well, school experience was good. You know, again, I grew up here in Rockwood. You know, talk about an interesting story here that I always throw out. When I was born, we lived down in the industrial park where the industrial park is today. A lot of people don't know this, and, you know, Brian, I know Brian don't know it, and you might remember that used to just be farmland down there back in years and years and years ago. There was 3 families lived down there. My family, there was an Isham family, and the Fisher family. That was the only ones that lived down there. If you went through there today, I can tell you exactly where the house was. It's the oldest building down there. It's a little block building. Right before you go around the curve right there to go across the railroad tracks. That's where I grew up. I say grew up. I was there, I don't know, we probably moved there away from there when I was about 3 maybe.
Is there still a structure there?
There is. The last time I was there, which has probably been many years, you know, driving through there, that structure's still there. Now you got all the big factories and stuff there now, but it's just a small block building that I don't even know what it's used for. But anyways, they made that industrial park, made everybody move out from there. My dad worked at Rona Electric, which was just right down the road, you know, at the steel mill. You know, so we were, you know, living there, and then obviously they made that the industrial park, and they made everybody move out, and they started building all that stuff down there. At that point in time, after that, we moved up on the highway up on Cardiff. You know, there's a big house up there, and, you know, we stayed there until I was probably about 8 years old, maybe 3rd grade, and then we moved over here in town, right over here on the other side of Gateway, over on Douglas, and that's where, you know, we lived.
Stayed there
all these years
for the rest,
you know, so,
for the duration.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And so did you start kindergarten at Ridgeview?
No, I actually went to Pond Grove.
Okay.
Because we were up
So
in
there were
Carter
different
Ferry.
communities,
Yeah.
kindergartens.
I went to kindergarten in Pond Grove, and I understand, looking back on it now, I didn't really think about it at that time, but looking back on it, I understand why I went to Pond Grove in first grade, but I really don't know, or I'm sorry, kindergarten, but I really don't know why I didn't go to Pond Grove in first and second grade. Because we still lived up in the Carter area in that area. But anyways, about third grade's when we moved to town, basically. And that's when we started going to Ridgeview. So about third grade, and been there ever since. So.
Who were some of the teachers that you had? Do you remember?
Oh, my goodness, there's several. Mary Sue Kelly. I'm going to forget some. Nell Bilbrey. Dr. Wilson was the principal. There was a lady, Miss Parks. I had her for 2 years. It was kind of ironic, have her 1 year and then move up a grade and she follows up to there. There were several, and there's several that's still around, that I still see, occasionally. Donna Davis, y'all know Donna Davis. Donna Davis was my kindergarten teacher in Pond Grove.
Oh,
Yes.
I didn't know that she had taught at Pond Grove.
Her first year teaching, and she says it every time I see her, which I don't see her very often anymore. But she always brings that up, and whoever she's sitting there talking to, she always says, hey, this is my first class. But Donna, she actually taught kindergarten and first grade. Our classes were combined. Like old school stuff.
Yeah.
So that was, I'm sure that was an experience for her, teaching both grades like that.
How fun.
Yeah.
Donna has been on the podcast before
okay.
for our Chris and Nell Bilbrey.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What age did you start getting active in athletics?
I probably started football. I obviously started it first. Probably when I was, I don't know, probably about 8.
Did they have Rams back then?
Yeah, there was Rams.
Way back then.
The first year, I'll never forget the first year. Me and my brother, for some reason, we started late, and I really don't know why. And he's 2 years older than me, but I was on the same team, and I was on that team. It was like that second Rams team at the time, whatever it's called, Cutters or whatever. I was on that team for 3 years, and I don't know if I was actually supposed to be on that team, or they just kind of threw me out there because I came in late and everything. And of course, at that time we were green and gold. The uniforms were green and gold, but they'd run out of helmets. And if anybody that's been on here has talked about this, our Rams program started out, we were red and white. Okay, so I actually wore a red helmet with my green and gold uniform that very first year, and then so obviously that was a learning experience that I can remember vividly. Being a lot of bad experiences there, being that young and playing with people that's 2 years older. A lot of people don't understand that. That's a big leap.
That's a big age difference when you're little.
Yeah, it sure is.
Do you remember who the coaches were at the time?
Oh yeah, Smoky Kirk, Coach Brown, Tub Britt, Kenny Cole.
Okay.
Ray, Raymond. There were several, really good ones,
You played for a bunch of guys that laid the foundation.
Yeah,
There.
they were great. It was an experience that, if it wasn't for Smoky Kirk, I've said this over the years, and there's a story behind that. And if y'all want me to talk about it, I will. But
we absolutely
I would
do.
not be sitting here talking to you all right now, not in this capacity. I promise you I will not. That first year, again, I'm just thrown out there. I don't know what I'm doing. I do remember it, and we started late, and me and my brother, we wanted to join the Boy Scouts, and we were doing both. We were doing football and Boy Scouts, and Mom was running us back and forth everywhere and doing all this and that, and we were down at Camp Buck Tom for something, and she got mad about something, and she told us, me and my brother Bill, that, hey, we're going to have to choose. It's either Boy Scouts or football. I almost chose Boy Scouts, I did. And I have nothing against Boy Scouts now. Please don't anybody think about this, but I almost did. But I did, I chose football. So thank goodness, because I may not ever went back to it, you never know. But my second year of playing football for Smoky Kirk, he had moved me to a running back, a fullback position. And I couldn't remember the place. You know, I never played it. I just played 1 year of football, and they just threw me on the line. You know, just
Hit somebody in front of you.
Well, it wasn't him that. Just say let him play a few minutes, and you know we're getting killed or we're killing somebody, and so let him play a few minutes, whatever. But we went to Loudon, and back then, you know, parents either drove you, and we did start taking buses a little while after that. Even in the Rams, we used to take buses.
I didn't know that.
But I remember going up there. We was playing in a jamboree up in Loudon, and man, I was scared to death. And it was just me and my mom. And man, I couldn't remember the plays. I was afraid I was going to mess up and everything. And anyways, I talked to Mom. She knew how nervous I was, and she told me, she said, go talk to Smoky about it. And I was like, okay. So I get out of the car, I go find Smoky, and I go over to him, and I said, hey, can I go back to the line? Because it was simple, you know, back then. Just go play offensive line, just go hit the man in front of you, whatever. You don't really have to know anything. And he told me, he said, just stay with it. You'll be okay, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So I did. I stayed with it. And being my size, which, you know, was not huge at the time or even going through high school, but it was bigger than most. At that point in time, if I would have went back to the line, I might have been a lineman. Okay, and I know a lot of people wonder where I'm going with this story, but when I would have got into high school, if I'd have been a lineman, I wouldn't have had a chance to go to college. I wouldn't have had that opportunity to go play college football. So I look back at that Smoky kept me in there as a running back, so I stayed and I was decent with it. I'm not going to, y'all
Just
know
because
me,
you wouldn't have been a
I don't know. I might have been a lineman the rest of my career.
Okay.
You know, going through the Rams and junior high and on through high school. And then when it got to that point, you know, I was 205 pounds when I graduated high school. And, you know, you're not going on to play offensive line at 205 pounds even at that time. So, you know, but a 205-pound fullback or linebacker is pretty decent size. So if it wasn't for Smoky, he could have said, okay, go ahead and just go play offensive line, and I could have done that. But, you know, he's seen something in me and kept me there, and it worked out really well. You know, obviously, you know, it worked out really well. And if I hadn't had a chance to go play college football, I probably wouldn't have went to college. And so with that being said, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you all about all this.
Yeah, that's so neat. Well, he put you on a good path.
He did. He really did. You know, and I've credited him for that, you know, for many, many years, you know, now, so.
That's great. That's great. Who were some more coaches that you had through? I guess Larry Davis was your coach in high school.
He was, but you know, Lawrence Baskin and Van Landingham. Were my middle school coach, junior high. You know, he was junior high back when you and I went through school. You know, seventh, 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Yes.
And so we were junior high, but you know, those guys, you know, Lawrence Baskin, you know, so fundamentally sound in the game of football. You know, I know y'all have talked about him, surely to goodness, on here. He wasn't going to overthink it, but you were going to learn how to get in a stance. You was going to learn how to play the game of football. Bottom line, you was going to learn how to tackle. You know, so now when you got to high school, you knew the fundamentals of football. And, you know, I think that to a certain extent, you know, we're lacking a little bit of that now, and we always have been for a long, long time. And I'm not taking anything away from the Rams coaches or the you know, Coach Harvey at the middle school. I'm not doing that. But, you know, it's just the way it is anymore. Everybody's, you know, trying to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that instead of just this. And then when I got to high school, Larry Davis, C.W. Perriman, you know, Larry was the head coach and C.W. was the defense coordinator, of course. And then my senior year, Larry had left and we hired Mark Perriman. And again, I've got to give a lot of credit to all those guys too. You know, again, you know, we'll get on the end of that as we go along here, but you know, playing for Larry Davis was great. You know, I can't say a bad thing about it. But Mark, you know, probably took it a little bit further, you know, as far as my career, got me really wanting to play on the next level and got me wanting to do these type things. And, you know, and it's all worked out at the end, you know, but, you know, so it worked out really well for me, obviously, you know, so.
Yeah.
So you finish your career at Rockwood and you go to Tennessee Tech.
Yeah, went to Tennessee Tech, had that opportunity. I had 2 scholarship offers, one from Carson Newman and one from Ashland College, a little school up in Ashland, Ohio, Division II schools. You know, I wasn't the biggest, I wasn't the fastest, wasn't, you know, all that. And then I had, you know, now if we're talking about scholarship offers on Division II level, you know, it's, hey, we'll give you X amount of dollars, but then you give us you know, even more, you know, and I didn't have the grades. I wasn't the best student, that ever came through Rockwood. I'm sure anybody knows me, understands that. They probably think, how in the world did he get to where he's at right now? So I wasn't going to get any academic money. My parents did work. They made a, decent living, but with 5 kids, it's hard, growing up as far as that goes. But it probably wasn't going to get me into the financial aid deal. Carson Newman, back then, Division II, they were a powerhouse. They were winning national championships, and I really wanted to go. And Cotton Mitchell was recruiting me. I'm sure Cotton Mitchell's been, that name is. Cotton, came down, recruited me, said, hey, we'd really like you to come up here, but we think you're a little too short to play linebacker and a little too slow to play fullback. I said, well, Coach, where do you want me to play? He said, I want you to play nose man. Well, again, at that time, I'm probably 215 pounds. Thinking, I'm about to go play Division II college football, play nose man. I don't know about this. Right. So anyways, having Mark Pemberton and Coach K and, several others that went to Tech.
Yes.
I got invited to walk on at Tennessee Tech, and walk-ons, you go in and, I was a preferred walk-on, so they were going to treat me pretty good, but they weren't going to treat me like a scholarship player. And, of course, I was going to have to foot the whole bill, but, the difference between a state school and a private school is a whole lot of difference, especially way back then. There's a whole lot of difference. So anyways, I was thinking about it, and to be honest with you, again, another funny story, the reason I chose to go to Tennessee Tech. I feel like I've always been kind of humble in everything that I've done, and I always had to work hard to do anything. Carson Newman's winning national championships. Ashland, I didn't want to go to Ashland, Ohio. I knew nothing about them, really. Tennessee Tech, they were 1-10 and 0-11 a couple of years before I got there. And I thought, hey, I'm going to go there. Surely I won't be the worst one on the football team. So that's basically how I ended up at Tennessee Tech, going in with that. And lo and behold, what did I didn't know enough about it. And, came from Rockwood, and we had 24 players on the team, and, going to Tennessee Tech, and there's 100 of us out there day one. And, and I'm out there, I can remember it like it was yesterday, looking around going, dang, I might be the worst one on this football team.
But you weren't.
I wasn't, and I wasn't, one of the better ones, but the one thing I could do, and back then they brought freshmen in 3 days early. And I guess they wanted to run off as many freshmen as they could before the varsity could get there. So we was there with freshmen, and Coach Ragland, my head coach, he told us after the first or second practice that, hey, we're looking for kickers, punters, long snappers. I was like, well, okay, I can long snap. And so I stayed after practice and long snapped. Well, next thing you know, now the varsity gets there 3 days later, and there's not but one other long snapper on the whole football team, and he's the starting center. Well, again, being on that level, you probably don't want your starting center having to do any more than what he's having to do. So Coach Ragland told me that, hey, I'll give you a half scholarship if you beat him out. Well, then, now I'm really working at this. I knew how to do it, but I thought, hey, this is something might help out. Well, I beat him out, so we went on through fall camp, and then back then, man, you was 3 or 4 days, or 3 or 4 practices per day. It wasn't like it is now where they just practice here and there. And I'm thinking, okay, I beat him out. Where's the scholarship at? I've already paid. We was on quarter system at that time. I went ahead and paid the first quarter. Well, my dad did. And then he comes and tells me, he said, hey, I want you to do it this first ball game. If you do good, then, and sure enough, I did okay the first ball game. And then I think it's like that next Monday or Tuesday, he called me in his office and told me to go over to the business office and get half my money back.
So he was good on his
Yeah,
service.
absolutely. So it worked out really well. So, and then as I went on, I ended up building up and, playing more throughout my career, and went on scholarship, and was very fortunate that I came out of college not owing anything. From earning the scholarship to parents, footing what little they had to foot, it was great. So, and how hard that is anymore, having to pay, for college tuition and stuff. So I'm very fortunate with that.
So when you went, and did you know that you wanted to major in education and become a coach?
I wanted to do one or two things. I wanted to follow in the footsteps of, Coach K or Coach Pemberton or C.W. Pemberton. They were all health and PE position people. And so I was either wanting to do that, but I had an older brother that was a physical therapist. I thought about doing physical therapy. That's the only other thing that I probably thought about doing was physical therapy.
Right.
But at that time, again, I wasn't the best student in the world. I was a much better college student than I was a high school student. I'm not ashamed to admit that.
Relatable.
I just, I went to high school.
You had more purpose, or you had something that you wanted to do.
I didn't want to go back home to face my mother if I flunked out.
Yeah, well, I mean, that wasn't going to be good. Now, it wasn't like I started out on that path. I mean, it took me a little bit to figure it out. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you a story about Dad. Again, high school, I went and, Mom looked at more of that conduct grade than she did that letter grade. That was more, as long as you was passing, but you better be doing what you're supposed to be doing. And, Dad really never got involved with the grade stuff, but, luckily I graduated high school, and somehow, I don't know, the requirements must not have been very high to get into Tennessee Tech at that time. I went in there and I went, and Lord, I didn't have no idea. I remember the first day I registered, you went in that room and you're having to do your own schedule, and I was ready to quit before I even started because I had no idea what I was doing. I was trying to schedule a biology class, that had been full for 2 weeks, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't get in that biology class. But, that first quarter, I really struggled academically. I think I'm going to say some stuff that I'm not real proud of, but probably had a 1.7 GPA.
It's probably a damn math class.
No, it wasn't a math class. It was not a math class. It was, it was one of them
health classes.
No, it was college English. That English stuff. I didn't really understand the concept of that college English stuff. And that lady, she
Miss Hegel and Miss Thompson would not be.
No, when I went back, a little later, it was kind of hard to face them knowing what I had done, but. Dad had bought me, and Miss Malco, you're going to remember this. Brian, you're probably too young, but back then there was a program out. It was called Where There's a Will, There's an A. Do you remember that? It was on commercials, TV commercials. Dad bought me that.
Oh.
I don't know what he paid. Well, I can honestly say I never opened it up. He wasted his money, but I figured it out. I started figuring it out, and then next thing you know, a little bit later on, I'm making Dean's List. Believe it or not, I've got friends coming down to watch me play, and in the Saturday program, they're opening it up and they list the Dean's List, and they're like,
there he
in
is.
the world. So, it's one of those things. And I tell students, I just told one the other day. Matter of fact, was griping about Rockwood High School don't prepare me for college. Well, no, I'm going to be the first one to tell you. We probably don't prepare them on the level that they needed to be prepared for. You got to figure it out.
Yeah.
If I can figure it out, then you ought to be able to figure it out. We're going to teach you all that you need to know, and you got to do it yourself.
Yeah, the opportunity's there. You've got to have that desire.
Now, these private schools, Webb, and stuff like that, but now it's a little different there because now they're forking over thousands of dollars, and they got support from family and parents, and
there you go.
sometimes we don't have that here.
It's a different culture.
It's a different culture. You're right, but you got to figure it out.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to remember a story that I know pieces of it. I know my husband was a little bit older than you in school, but I think that y'all had home ec together. It was either Miss Ruffner or Miss Davis.
You're getting there, yeah. It was a family life class with Miss Ruffner.
Okay, and something happened. Anyway, Jerry said, I know I caused him to get probably the only paddling he ever had.
Oh, no. I got many.
Okay, but he takes the blame for something,
it was his fault.
And it was his fault.
It was
but what's the story?
The story was we were in there and we'd finished our work and we had like the desks were up together. So my desk was right here and I was facing Miss Ruffner at her desk. Okay. And Jerry was facing me, had his back to her. And I was going to get a little pinch of skull, while I was in there. And I told Jerry, I said, Jerry, do not move. Okay, because Miss Ruffner's looking right there. I said, do not move. About the time I got ready to put that in my mouth, his pencil rolled off his desk. And it hit the floor, and he bends over, and Miss Ruffner is looking right at me as I've got that tobacco going in my mouth. So, Yeah, Jerry.
So that was Jerry's
that
fault,
Was,
yeah.
That was Jerry's fault.
He did it on purpose.
It was his
I know.
fault.
No, he
I-
liked John.
I've got,
That's
Coach K,
funny.
y'all have had Coach K on here. Coach K gave me a paddling. He was a teacher there when I was there. He taught, I was in his biology class, and everybody's wadding up paper wads and throwing them in the garbage. Well, of course, I had to follow suit. I wadded up a paper wad and threw it in the garbage. And he said, "Come on, Webb, let's go." I was like, "What for?" I said, "Everybody else is doing it." He said, "Yeah, they're making them. You missed it." He took me out in the hall and paddled me for that. That's the honest
I believe it. I
truth. He swears up and down he don't remember it, but he did. He paddled me for that.
Sounds like,
Yes.
yeah, he's
Yeah.
conveniently forgotten.
Yeah.
Did Miss
Yeah.
Willis, was she a teacher when you were in
Yes,
school?
Miss Willis was there.
Did
Yeah.
you ever get one of her paddlings?
No. Miss Willis is great. I stayed away from her.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Only time I ever got around her is, when she went down the hall at lunchtime, and had a kickball in her hand and just gathering up as many as she could to take us out and play a game of kickball out on the baseball field. So,
Well, then even after she retired, you had ping pong tables in the lobby outside the gym between the cafeteria. After she was retired, I remember her coming in
With her own
with her own
paddle. With her own
paddle,
paddle.
challenging some of those
Larry Davis paddled me.
kiddos.
Larry
Davis
yeah, again, I'll tell that story. We've talked about that down at the field house. We're in the band room. We've got homeroom in the band room, and we got a substitute teacher that day. And of course, you got all the drums and all the instruments there, and we're all beating on them, blowing on horns, and the substitute just had enough, and she swears up and down, "Hey, the next person that touches any of these instruments, you're going to the office and get them." Well, I just couldn't help myself, being the idiot that I was. I just had to hit that drum one more time. And so, next thing you know, I'm in the office with Coach Davis. She grabs him. Of course, she's a substitute. She ain't gonna paddle you. So, Coach Davis gave me a paddling, and
Who was your principal?
Leroy
Wilson.
Wilson. Yeah, I got one from him. I can't really tell you exactly why I got one from him, but I do remember getting one.
He's a paddler.
Yeah. So it was.
That's funny. Speaking of substitute teachers, I was telling them before you got here that how I continue to be grateful to you, even though I've been retired now. And you know what I'm going to say. On those days when a substitute or multiple substitutes didn't show up, and it happened a lot, I would send the classes to John, and he didn't flinch. He just took all those extra kids and kept them out of trouble and kept them busy. And sometimes I'd team up. Sandy Langley would be the only substitute that showed up, and I'd put her in there. So thank you again.
Well, I
for all
appreciate that, but and it was hard back then. We didn't have subs, and we were going through the COVID stuff, and people was having to miss for this and that and whatever. But there was about 2 years, and that's always happened. To this day, I'll do it. Not as
We
much
had a
as
couple
I
of
do.
rough years.
But a couple of years, I swear, I've told this story. If we go 180 days of school, I probably was there 175 of them. I probably wasn't there.
Oh, yeah,
every
you
one.
don't miss.
But about two years in a row, I bet close to 100 days, I was watching someone else's class.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't care to. But now, if you remember now, I did ask you all, hey, you can't evaluate me like you evaluate me.
Right. When I've got
I did it
all
for a
these kids.
reason.
Yeah.
No, that was, you really stepped up and helped out a lot, but we had some real rough times there.
Well, it was. And wasn't nothing nobody could do anything about, So,
No.
But now it seems like we got a few extra subs up there, and we got people that's not missing quite as much, so it helps out.
Yeah.
You can't predict that.
But you got to have people that will step up and help, and Coach Webb was that person. He filled that need.
I know there's been plenty of times I've had to bring something to him, and he'll say it's my free period. And I'll claim where you at. Oh, I'm in the cafeteria with the class, or I'm in the gym with the class.
Yeah, well, it got to the point there, they were trying to work around that. I'd watch them all day long, but they'd give me a
We
little
really,
break that I would.
did everything we could to give you
so,
your.
Yeah, that helped out a whole
Yeah.
lot, just to get away from it for a few minutes.
So we've got you through Rockwood. We've got you to Tennessee Tech.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get you back to Rockwood now?
Well, again.
I had you at Ridgeview, but there's some missing time there from
Yeah.
the Tech to coming back.
When we're about to go way back in this story. I graduated from Tennessee Tech after 4.5 years, in December. And at that time, when I got there, and that's one reason that I started figuring things out, because when I got there, I really didn't run around with the freshman class as much. I I did, but I had some older guys that was sophomores. And, started befriending them and started taking some classes with them. And, they were good students. And so I had to be a good student. So, peer pressure got me. So that's what got me through school. But anyways, I graduated in December and I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do exactly. I knew I had a couple of friends. They graduated the spring before and they went to Georgia to coach and teach. So that was kind of what I had planned on doing, is going to, out of state and going to Georgia or something like that. Well, but I was done with school. Now, Dad wanted me to stay in, start working on my master's. I was done with school. I'd done about all I wanted to do at that point in time. So I came home, Christmas, right there before Christmas, and had no idea. I'd been working at the Coca-Cola plant in the summers, during that time through my college career. I guess I thought that's what I was going to do, is just go back down and work at Coca-Cola and, work through there, and at the end of the year, then maybe try to get a job and go to Georgia or whatever. But having so much family, Dad, and me growing up, I grew up in church, at Riverside Baptist Church. That's
in Harriman.
To this day, that's where I'm a member in Harriman. Gene Thurman was a member. Y'all remember Gene? He was the superintendent of Harriman City Schools at that time. It just so happened that a guy, Coach Larry Cannon, he had retired and went to work at Oak Ridge in December. So they were looking for someone to fill his position. So, of course, Dad knowing Gene and me knowing Gene and Gene knowing us, somehow we got together, and next thing you know, I'm working at Harriman High School.
I did not know
Now, don't
that.
let her act like this. She taught at Kingston, so
Yeah.
she don't get
No.
that brand new.
No, I know. We talked about that when I was
So-
on the dark side. But I just didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know
I went
that.
to work at Harriman High School to begin with, and I taught. I had health and physical education. Was my two certifications that I had at that time, and I taught maybe one PE class, and taught 2 or 3 driver's ed, because back then that really wasn't that big of an issue, because I'd had just a class or two to get that driver's ed certification, and then I just needed one class to get that biology certification. And this is probably something you didn't know either. Thank goodness it didn't work out this way. But anyways, so I taught a biology class, I taught 1 PE class, and I guess I taught 2 or 3 driver's ed at that time. And so I go to Roan State to take that one extra class, during that time, during that spring, winter semester, whatever, to get that biology certification. And I'm hearing at the end of the year, if I come back, I'm going to be the biology teacher, because the biology teacher was going to move to do something else. Well, of course, at that time, you didn't care. I was not a biology teacher, but, I was playing the game and best I could. And so I really didn't want to do that, but, hey, I've got a job. So I'm playing summer league softball up in Harriman, in Flower Mill Flats, and this is kind of crazy here. So I went up there and I played the game, and I'm walking out to my car or truck, whatever it is I got at that time, and it's like something out of a movie. Here comes one of these big custom conversion vans pulling up next to me, and all of a sudden the door opens up. It's Mark Pemberton, I think Coach K, Coach Holloway, and Coach Julian. They're all in this van, and they say, "Get in." Okay? Now this is in the summer. Okay. So I jump in, and they commence to tell me, hey, they're actually going to start a PE program at elementary over at Ridgeview, which had never been done. The teachers just taught PE at that time, just regular classroom teachers. But they were actually going to have a PE teacher, and they were going to have 2 of us, and they wanted me to take the job. So, and I hated it. Now, don't get me wrong, it was hard to tell the Harriman people, because they were very nice to me. I mean, everybody up there, really took me under their wing and, helped me out. There was many days I was walking the halls thinking, what in the world am I doing here? But, it was a great experience. It really was. Plus, I didn't want to teach biology at that time. So, I decided I'm gonna come to Rockwood. That's a no-brainer. I'm coming to Rockwood, but it was tough.
After getting abducted, you decided to come to Rockwood.
So, now I've got to go tell Coach Hart, which was very good to me, and, Miss Bowman, Marion Bowman, and all them. And I go to Coach Hart's house, and, man, I sit there for probably 30 minutes just in silence. He wasn't talking to me. I wasn't talking to him. He knew what I was about to do, but it was tough. But anyways, I told him I was going to go to Rockwood, and You know, it's been the greatest decision I ever made, you know, as far as that goes. And I come to Rockwood, and I teach elementary PE over at Ridgeview for 3 years.
And you had him?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And I didn't want to be in elementary anymore, you know. So at that time, Mark Pemberton was the head coach at Rockwood, and he resigned and took the Cumberland County job. So I'll do anything to go back to high school at this point. You know, I just wanted to get back into the high school level and get away from the elementary stuff. And, you know, again, great experience, but I just didn't want to do it anymore. You know, it's tough. And, you know, from kindergarten to 6th grade, you know, you might have a kindergarten class 1 hour and then a 6th grade, you know, and then you're back to 3rd grade and 4th grade, whatever. So it was difficult.
It's hard. I mean, I cannot imagine
So,
doing elementary school.
Mark wanted me to come to Cumberland County, and I knew at that time I needed to have those. I was willing to go to Cumberland County and teach biology. That's how bad I wanted out of the elementary.
Yeah.
You know, and it wasn't anything to do with the people, because there's still some people over there I really think the world of. You know, it's just I just didn't fit in with
Not
the
an elementary person,
or elementary.
right.
I'm sorry.
I get it.
So at that time, when I had 3 years before, when I finished that class at Rome State, I didn't turn it in to the state. Okay, because I went and started teaching elementary PE. Didn't think nothing about it. So now I'm about ready to go to Cumberland County. So I start checking on it. Well, and within those 3 years, they'd upped the requirements. Thank goodness. I never got that biology certification. If I would have done it when I was supposed to, I would always have that biology certification. Because you know as well as I do, I would have been in a biology class somewhere along my
I know one principal that would have made you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I ended up, it worked out great. They needed a driver's ed teacher. So I ended up taking that class that I needed to get my driver's ed certification, and you know, taught driver's ed in Cumberland County High School for a year before I came back to Rockwood.
So Mark went to Cumberland County, and then Gentry was just a coach for 1 year before you came over.
And didn't they promise to interview people after you take that job for 1 year?
No, I mean, it was, we interviewed, you know, me, Coach Gibson, Coach Julian, we all interviewed for the head coaching job. We knew we wasn't getting it. We didn't want it. Well, there was none of us really, we didn't want it. We just went and did the interview because they asked us to do the interview. You know, it was after spring practice. We probably went in there like this right here, up there at the high school office. They asked us a couple questions, and, you know, we didn't want it.
Why didn't you want it?
I wasn't ready.
Okay.
I mean, I've been doing this for 3, maybe 4 years at that time. I wasn't ready to be a head coach, and had no desire. And but anyways, I ended up moving on to Cumberland County, and with Mark, and you know, it was probably the best experience I ever had, because I left Rockwood probably being the 4th, maybe even the 5th assistant coach on that staff, to being Coach Pemberton's probably his 2nd assistant behind his dad, CW. So I was able to move up the ranks, and I learned so much within a matter of, you know, at 1 year of how to coach football. It wasn't even funny. So it became you know, it was hard. You know, we was trying to get people out. We were very competitive. We wasn't winning many ball games, but we were very competitive. I think everybody was pleased in what Mark was doing. But it was hard. It really was. And you know, during the winter after the season, I'd go in the weight room, and this went on for probably a couple of months. I'd walk in there one day, and Mark would say, "Hey, I'm leaving." And I'd say, "Well, okay, I'm gonna stay." Then the next day, I might walk in and say, "Hey, Mark, I'm leaving." And he'd say, "Well, I think I'm gonna stay." This went on for probably a couple of months. Well, I'd run into Leroy Wilson at Walmart, the old Walmart here in town. And knowing that Coach Gibson was retiring, he asked me if I would be interested in coming back to Rockwood. And at that time, you know, again, I was kind of loyal to everything, you know, Mark especially. And well, I decided, hey, I'm gonna leave. You know, we've talked about it enough. So I walked in whatever day it was, and I looked at Coach Pemberton and I said, "Coach, I've decided I'm definitely leaving. I'm going back to Rockwood." And I was going to come back and be an assistant with Coach Gentry. You know, and believe me, I came back that spring and I was an assistant for him. And Mark said, "All right, let's go." I said, "Where are we going?" And you had to know, up there at the football stadium at that time, half of it was football, the other half was central office. So you just walk through a door and through a little concourse area and right into the central office, to the superintendent's office. Yeah, it's kind of weird. So we walked in there and we walked straight into, I can't remember exactly, Mr. Hall maybe is the superintendent's name. We sat down there and Mark resigned right then and there. Well, I never have resigned from Cumberland County High School. I don't guess there was any need. I guess they knew I was leaving. So anyways, that's when I decided I was coming back to Rockwood. Of course, I had to fill, the rest of the year out there at Cumberland County. And, Mark pretty much, when Mark does
He's
anything,
gone,
when he's gone.
he's
Yeah.
gone.
So,
Had another school recruited him?
well, he actually decided he was going to get out of head coaching for a little while and go down to Upperman and be an assistant for a while under Jimmy Maynard down there. And
Maynard, that's a legend.
yeah, it sure
That's
is.
a legend.
But yeah, I was going back to Rockwood, and he was leaving and going to Cumberland County. And at that time, Dan Van Winkle was the athletic director up there. And Dan came to me a couple times and asked me. He said, hey, we'd like for you to maybe take over for Mark. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it. And why not? Well, I'm not ready. Again, 4 or 5 years into doing this, I was not ready. And so anyways, I come back to Rockwood. I was taking days off up there so I could be at spring practice down here. And I went through spring practice at Rockwood. And then, one thing leads to the other.
You better get ready.
So we got through the
Gentry's
school
not
year.
working out.
Well, I mean, I had no earthly idea, and I don't have anything bad to say. I'm coming in, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and the school year's ended, and so now I'm here full time, back here full time, and I'm down in the weight room one day, and I think it was Scott Harvey that was down there with me because he was an assistant at that time, and we had a group in there working out, whatever, and I get a phone call, in there in the office, and it was Brillo. Brillo calls me and says, hey, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm down here at the field house working, got a group working out. He says, is anybody down there with you? I was like, well, yeah, Coach Harvey's down here. He said, well, tell him you got to go somewhere for a minute. I need you to come up here at my dad's house. And everybody knows where his dad lives, just right in front of right up past the high school there. I said, okay. I said, I'll be up there in just a few minutes. So anyways, I go up, and there's Leroy and Brillo up there. And so they're telling me what all's went on, and I have no idea. I've not been there long enough, and I'm denying it. No, they ain't none of that stuff. Y'all just calm down, And this goes on for a long time, and there's like, listen, we're going to make a change, with the head coach. We want to offer you the job. And again, I'm like, no. Again, this went on for a long time. And so I'm like, guys, just calm down. Let's think about this. And finally, Brillo smacks the back of his truck and says a few things I can't say on here. And says, listen, we're making a change right now. If you don't want the job, then that's fine, but we're hiring somebody. If you want it, it's yours. And being the good guy that I am, I said, okay. Because if you remember now, I was the head basketball coach at Rockwood High School before I was the head football coach. Again, that's a different story. We can get into that in a second. I told him, I said, listen, okay, I will do it for 1 year.
And here we are.
31 years later, I'm sitting here telling this story.
He's still on that 1 year contract.
Yeah.
I think you're Coach Tom was the coach for 10 years, but
I think he was here. I think he was here for maybe 14 years because he used to come down, and that was a great guy to sit and learn from too. I always knew who he was, but he had a grandson played for me several years back, and so he was. He'd come to practice, and he'd always come down to field house early and just hang out, and we'd talk. I got to know so much about Luke Faust. I got to know so much about football back in the 30s, 40s, maybe even the 20s, from Coach Tom, that it wasn't funny. But I remember he used to tell me that, I was about to pass him. I won't say he was here from like 50 to 64 or something like that.
So he was probably second, the longest run as coach.
Probably, yeah.
And you've broken that record.
He's the dean of Roane County coaches.
Yeah, so, but anyways, that's how I got here. And again,
wow.
I took it for a year and going on 31 now. So
one more year.
Well, yeah, that's what I keep telling us.
So it's 96.
Okay.
There's certain games that when I think of your tenure, I think of certain games. One of them, of course, is 96. I think it's the second game of the year. You play Wartburg, coached by Larry Davis. It's your first victory.
Yep.
What does that mean to you that it's Larry Davis
Larry.
over there?
Well, you know, to be honest with you, I never really thought about it in a long, long time. I really haven't. You know, if you'd asked me who my first win was, I would have probably said Wartburg. Actually, I was thinking it was, and you know this better than I do.
Maynardville the
I'm
next
thinking
week?
it was Horse Maynard.
That was the next week.
That was the next week.
The next week.
Okay, so.
I told you Brian's
Anyway,
encyclopedia of Rockwood High School
Yes, so,
sports.
and I trust him on that. But if he would have asked me, I would have said Horse Maynard because that's what I was thinking. But you said Wartburg, and Coach Larry Davis. Of course, I might throw that at him there. I don't think I ever have. You know,
Depends on how you act at practice, right?
Yeah.
Just say it in the headset when he's irritating you.
But yeah, that was a long time ago.
And then, I believe in the best environment that I've ever been in at that stadium in your tenure was the following season in 97.
Oh yeah, probably yes.
41-35, double overtime against Kingston. I think that was your arrival on the scene that people were like, oh, this Rockwood team it's back to those Pemberton days. They're real, they're here. I mean, what do you go through your mind that
my
night?
first year, you know, believe it or not, I had no earthly idea what I was doing, and I probably still don't, you know, to be honest with you. But we were competitive. You know, I think we finished 3-7 that year, but we was in every ball game except the Alcoa game.
Yes.
And you know, so we felt pretty good. You know, that was like that. But I guess you know, you just didn't think anything about it. And then the next year, you know, we ended up winning 9 ball games, and probably should have got to 10. We could have got to 10. We lost a really good player there towards the end of the season that would have really helped us. So it probably got us another round out of it, and maybe another victory or two. But yeah, that Kingston game, that was one that I'll always remember. And I know Brad Jones had it on TV a couple of years ago and showing it. That was weird, you know, watching that stuff. But that was unbelievable. You know, that's what Rockwood football is known for, right there. Not winning that ball game, but being in that type of game and environment and going down there on that lower end to play the overtime. And man, the crowd, the stadium just emptied, and all got down in that end zone. And you know, we scored and obviously won the ball game, and it was just crazy. I mean, you couldn't stir them with a stick in that end zone. It was 10, 15, 20 deep down there. Stuff we don't have quite as much anymore. You know, it's just the way small towns have changed over the years. But that was pretty good there. I like that one.
And David Collins running that option that night.
David Collins, yeah. You know, it was all David Collins, and I've give him credit. We had running back went the wrong way. David didn't have no choice but to run it in for a touchdown. To be honest with you, I mean, Kingston probably thought it was a trick play. You know, we got him going one way and brought it back the other way, whatever. But yeah, David had that on his own. That's for sure. You know,
I've never been in an environment like that. That was
a cool one there. Yeah.
As long as he could pitch the ball and run it, that's all I was worried about.
Yeah, David was a good one.
So, you know, your tenure, people always say Rockwood's going to run the football. They don't realize how much it has changed, how you used to line up in that power I, run the true option, and you've had kids that have slung it everywhere.
Yeah.
Corey Payne.
Yeah, we've thrown the ball, you know, and at the end of the day, everybody knows we're going to run it, but
when you find something you're
I've
good
had
at.
some really good quarterbacks that's thrown for a lot of yardage, you know, over the years. You know, Zach Brazils and Corey Paynes, and you know, going blank here. You know, on a few. You know, Aiden Amonette, you know, threw for over 1,000 yards last year. And, you know, we've had several. You know, Lucas Jolly. You know, threw I think a couple of years in a row. You know, like that. Zach had a couple of good years for me. So, you know, it's not like I don't want to throw the football. It's just sometimes, you know, you either don't have a quarterback that can throw it, or you might not have receivers that can catch it, or, you know, a line can block long enough. So there's a lot that goes into all that. So,
what games do you remember? I'm sure Meigs County comes to mind. And
yeah, that was almost a blur there. That was, you know, crazy. That was, you know, I had no idea what even happened, you know, at that point in time. But, man, we played Sweetwater down here one year, and we've done nothing for 3 quarters. We can't do anything. And Garrett Raby, you know, Garrett got Garrett out for football. Garrett was a really good athlete, but he was more of a basketball player and stuff like that. And got Garrett out. We wasn't that good at football team, but we're down, I don't know, a couple of touchdowns, and I can't really remember the sequence of it. But somehow we'd scored there and got it tied up or something there at the end, and Matt Roberts, for some reason, Sweetwater decided to throw the football. I have no earthly idea why they decided to throw the football. And they dropped back and tried to throw it, and Matt Roberts was a big, tall, lanky defensive end. He tipped it to himself and intercepted it, and we had time for one play, and I called timeout, and I go out there and I tell them hey, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to, Parsons is my quarterback. You're just going to take the snap and you're going to move over to the middle of the field. Then we're going to spike it, stop the clock, and we're going to run on there. We're going to kick the game-winning field goal, and y'all are going to meet me at the 50-yard line and celebrate. And sure enough, that's exactly what we did. It worked out perfect. But but for 3 quarters we couldn't do nothing, and then all of a sudden, we just came alive and somehow won that ball game. And, I remember that one. That was always kind of special. But there's so many of them, that we've had over the years. You remember probably the losses more than you do the wins, unfortunately, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
You talked about Rockwood football. We just celebrated the 100th season. You've been here for a lot of those seasons as a player, an assistant, and a head coach. A lot of people, especially my age, when they think of Rockwood football, they think of John Webb. What does that say to you that so many people associate it, during your tenure, including the new coach this year at Oliver Springs and at Midway, you will have faced 20 different county coaches during your tenure as the head coach.
Only you would know that,
Good
Brian.
job.
Only
I know,
you would know
Brian, you're amazing.
I would never know that.
know.
So.
What does that say to you, to the community, to you?
I've not really thought anything about it. I've loved doing what I'm doing, or I still wouldn't be doing it. I love Rockwood. Y'all know that. I probably have had a couple opportunities, and that just kind of had been brought to me that I could have left and decided not to. And there's probably been a lot that I could have probably pursued that I chose not to, and to stay here. And I enjoy it. But yeah, you're right. The 105 years or whatever we're on. 30. I guess you're gonna be year 31 as a head coach. I was here 5 years as an assistant. Played here. So do the math. So 40 years, whatever, out of the 105. That's kind of crazy when you think about it. I really never thought about it, but you brought it up, and that's what got me.
Yeah, it's making me think about it. My generation, we probably equated the name Pemberton more with Rockwood High School football, but that's the past. It is John Webb's name.
Program.
It is.
It is your
really
program.
Is.
Well, and I appreciate y'all saying that. I don't think of it that way. It's our program. It's our school. It's our team. It ain't about me. I tell the players all the time, hey guys, it's not about me. This is your team. I hope to have another one next year. As far as that goes. But this is your opportunity, and hopefully that they've took that and ran with it. And I've never really thought about it. Again, you're bringing this stuff up that I honestly never thought about, and probably not going to think anything else about it. Maybe one of these days I'll sit back and do it, but not right now. I don't have time.
Brian thinks about all that stuff. He'll just
Somebody has to. Somebody has to.
Well, what a good host does, being prepared and asking a tough question, knowing all the answers.
Think about your tenure. I know as an assistant and a head coach, who are some of the best players you think you've coached or coached against too?
Oh, that's almost an unfair question right there, because I have had so many good players. And if I go to start naming them, then I'm going to leave some people out. And I really don't want to do that. But there has been so many good players. I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for those players. And we've played against some really good ones. I have coached some that's just as good as anybody. And maybe one of these times I might sit down and write it down, and hey, this might be my best quarterback, or these might be my 2 best running backs, or something like that. But don't put me on the spot right there, because there's so many good ones, and they're still around here, and we don't have enough time to name them all.
But football means so much to this town and to a lot of students. I'm sure for many students you have been who Smoky was to you. And I guess we've had a lot of players go on and play
Mm-hmm.
in college, or just the things that they learn from playing a team sport and being part of a team is valuable.
Well, and that is one good thing about it. I think in my 30 years here as a head coach, I think I've had one kid that didn't graduate from high school.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
Now
That's
listen,
amazing
I'm not
stuff.
sitting here blowing smoke because it takes a village. You know that.
But it motivates some of those kids that want to be on the team to stay and do what they need to do.
Well,
to,
you know
to
as well as
stay.
I do, we can start naming names there, and you know some of them I'm talking about. But if it wasn't for football, they wouldn't stay in
Exactly.
school to graduate.
That was
And
their passion. That's what motivated them.
and that's what got them there. And they get to be a senior, and hey, why not? Let's go ahead and finish this up and graduate type thing. And so we've had quite a few of those. And now I've had some that might have moved off and didn't graduate from wherever else. But that if they finished up at Rockwood High School, I think I've just had one kid that didn't graduate, and that was unbelievable. That couldn't get him there to graduate. So,
Right.
and you know exactly what I'm talking about. We'll talk about it.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
we'll
know
talk
who
about
it is.
that
I think I know.
later.
It was fairly recent years.
Yeah, it's not been that long ago.
I want to ask him some questions about his family, but you keep on with your stats there.
Go ahead.
Okay. I just want to hear a little bit, get an update on Brody.
Oh, man, Brody's doing great. He's going to Rome State, taking the nuclear technology program that they
good.
started out there, a couple of years ago. He'll finish up. He's got one more year left. Now, when he first went, Brody, both of them do. He's a great kid. He's never caused me any problems, knock on wood. He wanted to go to the University of Tennessee, and knowing how Brody was, I was kind of talking to him, hey, why don't you go to Tech, whatever. So at that point in time, he really thought about going to UT or Tennessee Tech, and but we talked about it, and he didn't really have any idea what he wanted to do, and which he shouldn't at 18 years old. We none of us knew exactly what we wanted to
I
do
didn't.
at 18 years old, and we talked about that on many occasions. Son, you've got the right to change your mind as many times as you want to right now. But let's don't do it paying this much money. And he got it. He understood that. And he even said that at the end, hey, I think I'll just go to Rome State, just do general studies the first year. And that's what he did. And instead of getting in that program, so this past year he got in that nuclear technology program, and it's a 2-year program, so it's going to take him a little bit longer to get finished, but he's done great.
Oh, he's a good student.
Oh, he's a good student. Yeah, I don't know where he got it from. He sure got it from me or his mother. But yeah, he's been brought up good as far as that goes. He's had good teachers that's led him through that path. So yeah, he's doing good. He's doing real
Good.
And
It's fun. I thought it was fun to have my kids in the same school as me. I don't know if my kids thought that. Brody didn't seem to care.
no,
He's
but
easygoing.
him or Bonnie, either one. My daughter.
Oh
and
yeah,
stepdaughter.
Bonnie was there, and then she worked there for a little
and
bit.
She was, she was a little more talkative towards me than Brody was. Brody, man, he never said a word to me.
He was just kind of quiet all around.
He'd just walk right by you. Say, hey, son, and he'd, keep on going. Now Bonnie talked to me a lot because she'd always forget her lunch money, and she'd always come out and need lunch money, stuff like that. So yeah, she's done really good. I don't know if y'all know this, but I've got a grandson now.
I did. I've seen them in Walmart.
Yeah, that's fun.
And you're called Papa John?
No, it's Papaw.
That would be good.
Papaw. Yeah, really, that's what they were kidding around about. No,
I like Papa
it's
John.
fun,
That would be cute.
So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, having him around and changed the perspective a little bit.
It
Been a
does.
while.
Grandkids are
Yeah,
great.
it's something else, yeah.
It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I do agree in a small town, Leanne may not, you'll agree, even if you don't like it. Athletics are the front door to a school.
Oh, I don't mind that.
And I do think-
you and Coach K give me the hardest time. Act like I'm an anti.
She just doesn't know what
Sports.
football use for football.
Somebody in the building has to worry about academics.
Mm-hmm.
Not me.
That would be me, and all the rest of you can worry about the sports.
But I do think with you as the head coach and Coach K in basketball, and you can argue that Chris Metcalf with the band, we have a great front door that welcomes the community.
Yeah.
I know without you two, I wouldn't be nearly as active as I am in the school because neither one of y'all let me say no, or worse yet, y'all just call me and I say yes
That's right.
without asking why. I do have to ask this question from Mark Clem.
Okay.
What's your thoughts on black uniforms?
No, I don't think anything about them. I mean, I'll just be honest.
Is there a story here?
Wouldn't it
Yeah.
be nice on homecoming to wear orange and black uniforms as a throwback to the original school colors?
Oh.
I see she's
I'll
with you
answer
on
that
that.
question. No, that's not going to happen. It's been, you know, he's been wanting to do it. You know, and I've told him, you know, in the past, hey, you know, he'd buy them right now if we'd do it.
Maybe a little patch or something.
Yeah, you know,
But-
something. But you know, I'll never forget. I was at out of state championship games at Tennessee Tech. It was freezing cold, and I'm actually walking down the steps. I'm gonna go try to find some place to warm up. And Mark calls me and says, "Hey, what about these black uniforms? You know, black and orange uniforms?" I said, "Mark," I said, "Listen, man, you know, I just don't think they're gonna go very good black and orange with that gold helmet." And he said, "Well, okay. So what if we bought these things? Snap-on things. You know, we put a black helmet." I was like, "Okay." I said, "What about that green face mask? You know, you gonna buy me 40, you know, black face masks?" "Well, no, it won't look that bad." I said, "Mark, I'm not gonna go out there and look like a clown." You know. So, anyways, yeah, that's been ongoing for years, and I get it, I understand it, but it's not gonna happen. We're green and gold as far as I'm
green
concerned.
and White.
You know, green and white, yeah. The gold was added.
No, I mean, I think a little, I don't know, a little something, a little,
Now she cares about athletics when she's getting the fashion
Well,
design.
the fashion
yeah,
part.
yeah, the fashion part of it, yeah.
no, I care about it, I care
Yeah.
about it.
We touched on Chris Metcalf. We've interviewed him. You and him have a unique relationship compared to what a lot of coaches and band directors have. Can you touch on that?
They're, you know, we get along just fine. I mean, it's we've had, you know, people do both. You know, play football and in the band. And I'll tell you a funny story about that here in just a second. But you know, Chris and I get along great. You know, he'll do anything in the world I asked him to do, and I think he'd probably say the same thing to me. I'll try to do anything I could possibly do to help him, and you know, it's just it's very unique. You know, I hear about so many other people, they don't get along with, you know, football coaches, band directors, but
Never an issue at Rockwood High School, between you two, anyway.
yeah, no, it's great. You know, it's one of those things been going on. I can't remember exactly how many years he's been here, but we've had, like I said, we've had several, you know, of my players play in the band. And, you know, I'm going to give you a little quick story, a little funny story. We were down at Bledsoe County back in, I'm going to say 2009, something like that. And Robin Wampler, after the game, we ended up winning the ball game. And after the game, Robin Wampler comes up to me and says, "Hey, when was the last time you had a football player?" Now, this is like week 8 in the season, so let's clarify this. This is week 8, okay? This is later in the season. He said, "When was the last time you had a football player score a touchdown during the game and march in the band at halftime?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "When was the last time you had a player score a touchdown and play in the band at halftime?" I was like, "Rob, what are you talking about?" And he said, "Rod King." I said, "What about him?" He said, "He's in the band." I was like, "What?" I had no idea that kid was even in the band.
Are you kidding?
That's a true story. I had no earthly idea that kid was even in the band. And this was late in the season. I never, you know, he was, you know, he's a backup player, you know, so he probably wasn't the one that I was talking to, you know, much at halftime. I guess he'd just stay on the field and march in the band at halftime and come back out. I had no earthly idea that kid was in the band.
That's funny.
So,
That's
and
funny.
we've had several.
You
We've had
have.
several.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
we've had
remember, I could name a couple.
Jaden Murray comes to mind.
Nico Wright.
Yeah.
A Rihanna kid a few years ago, just a couple years ago. I'll never forget that. I was we were standing on the sideline, and it was kind of tense, or you know, right before halftime, and we was trying to score, or they was trying to keep them from scoring, or whatever. And I start feeling, you know, a little tug, you know, on the back, and I turn around, and it was that Rihanna boy, and I was like, "What?" And he said, "Hey, you care if I go on over and get ready for it might have been homecoming or something." And I was like, "No, go on." But yeah, we've had quite a few, you know, quite a few in the band.
And one of the neatest moments was the circumstances were terrible with the Sunbright game, with why the game was called.
Yeah.
But you kept your band out, your football team out to watch the band perform.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things that you don't ever see about, and you took the initiative, and there you were.
Well, I mean, you know, obviously, you know, what if people know what we're talking about, the game was called early, and So, we were not prepared to leave that early. So I took him in the locker room and said, hey guys, we're done a little early. Let's go back out here and support the band. Something we don't get to do, very often. So they enjoyed it. It was good I think the band, people enjoyed it. And, it wasn't nothing to put a feather in my cap or anything like that. It's just something that, they're there to support us all the time. So why not just support them when we get a chance?
Yeah.
So.
Very good. Okay, well, you've had a long day, Coach Webb.
It's been quite a while.
Worked
There's something important that happens Friday, right?
Yeah, we've got a kind of a big ball game coming up this week, so yeah. Kicking off a new season.
Yeah.
So.
Who are we opening against?
Oneida, at home.
It is going to be hot.
Yeah, it is. Hopefully it won't be as hot as it has been the last few days. It felt great out there. Now I've come in and, just right off the practice field today, people have been sitting there seeing me wipe sweat out of my eyes and whatever, but it's time of year. It's, it is what it is, Hopefully we're playing at the end of the season where it's freezing cold, so
right.
That's our goal. So we get a little bit of everything throughout the football season.
And this will air. What are your thoughts on this upcoming season? I read the article in the paper, but I know not many people read the Rowan County News anymore. So, what's your thoughts about this season? I know you've got some skill players coming back that are immensely talented.
We do, and we're work in progress, all the way around. But we feel good about our skill guys and our offense, defensive line. But the one thing I've been saying is it's been a good group. I'm telling you what, man, I really like this group that we got right now. I ain't gonna predict. We may go 0-10, with this group, but they've come to work every day, and we've added a few new coaches, and they've bought into it. The kids have bought into what they're doing, and it's just that's what makes it fun.
Will you give us a quick rundown of your current coaching staff?
Oh goodness gracious! I'm probably gonna leave some of them.
Well, there's a lot.
Jeff Allen, this is year 31 for me. He's been with me this year 29 for me. Larry Davis has been here for umpteen years. Rick Collett, Julian Anders has been with me for a lot of years. Thomas Davis has been with me for quite a few years now. Tommy Morrell, I think it's his third year with me. Brought Preston Gallagher back. Preston's been over Kingston for the last few years, so we've got him back here in Rockwood.
He was there.
Yeah, and Nehemiah Story. We've hired Nehemiah Story. He's 21 years old, and it's something we need because you've just seen me. People know who these people are. We're getting older, and getting a lot slower, and we need a little youth in the program. And man, he's brought it, especially in that weight room and out there on the field. It's a lot of excitement. Goodness, man, I hope I ain't left anybody out right off the top of the head. I'm sitting there trying to go around the coach's office and see where everybody sits, and so yeah.
Okay.
If I did, I apologize.
That's okay. We can put it in the comments. Someone will put it in the comments.
Yeah.
Someone will correct us, trust us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they will. And we like that. We encourage that.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for coming, taking the time out. I know it's the busy time of year, but it's also the right time to have the head football coach on right before football season starts. We will post a schedule. We hope to see you there. We need that environment back. I know things are different. It costs more to go to a game now.
Everything costs more, so.
We hope you'll get out. It's a fun group of kids. He did mention that the skill guys they're talented. One thing about Rockwood, they're going to block people. They're going to run the ball, and they're going to win some ball games. So hope you'll come out because like the guy next to me here said, it's all about hard work and stability, and John Webb has brought those two things to Rockwood. Leanne, you have anything?
No, just appreciate you coming. Kicking off a new season for you and a new season for our podcast, and go Tigers.
Always go Tigers. Please continue to join us as we continue to tell the story of Rockwood, the story of us.